The main auditorium of Marina Bay Sands in Singapore was immersed in a chilling, reverential silence, broken only by the almost imperceptible hum of the state-of-the-art climate control system. The ceiling, adorned with thousands of fiber optic crystals mimicking a digital constellation, cast a sterile glow over the white marble stage where Arthur Vance, the king of risk, stood motionless. Through the immense double-glass walls enclosing the building, the horizon of gleaming skyscrapers and neon lights of the metropolis resembled a science fiction backdrop, exuding an atmosphere of absolute power and ruthless meritocracy. Inside that glass dome, the air was heavy with the scent of expensive leather and designer perfumes. An environment where humanity was measured exclusively by algorithms and where any emotional flaw was deemed an unforgivable weakness in the eyes of the world's most powerful investors. Arthur Vance, dressed in a charcoal grey, custom-tailored cold wool suit from Savile Row, maintained a rigid posture, hands clasped behind his back and a piercing gaze that seemed to disarm any interlocutor. His platinum watch, a one-of-a-kind piece worth more than most of the city's luxury apartments, gleamed under the spotlights, marking the time of a life devoted to wealth accumulation and emotional isolation. Despite his flawless appearance and unattainable status, there was a deep dryness in his brown eyes, a reflection of the unprocessed grief he had carried for 5 years since the tragic loss of his young son. He had become an investment machine, replacing empathy with cold profitability calculations, moving through the world like an elegant ghost who openly despised any form of idealism or dream that could not be converted into immediate profit. The atmosphere of absolute efficiency was suddenly shattered when a young man of about 19, wearing visibly worn clothes and a patched backpack, managed to slip past the perimeter security and burst onto the illuminated stage, breathless and visibly desperate. Elias, his intense blue eyes blazing with feverish intelligence, was immediately surrounded by burly security guards who grabbed him by the arms, preparing to remove him with brute force before the scandalized audience. The contrast was violent and immediate. On one side, the financial elite protected by invisible barriers of status. On the other, a boy from the urban outskirts carrying a technological prototype made from scrap and reused electronic components. Elias's humiliation was public and palpable as he was dragged across the marble floor, his feet stumbling and his face revealing a mixture of fear and a determination that did not belong in that sterile environment. At the exact moment he was about to be thrown out of the auditorium, Elias managed to free one arm and with a swift movement hurled his small prototype, a low-cost water purifier, onto the oak table where Arthur was seated. The object slid across the polished surface and stopped in front of the millionaire, who stared at the metal and plastic contraption with deep, silent contempt. "You don't believe in me because you can't see what lies beneath your comfort level, but the world is dying of thirst while you count gold coins," Elias shouted, his voice choked with indignation. Before the guards dragged him away, Arthur noticed a small detail on the prototype, a worn sticker of a cartoon superhero, the exact same one his son used to stick on all his favorite toys, triggering a violent emotional jolt in his chest. Subscribe now so you don't miss a single detail of this emotional transformation, and comment below which city or country you're watching this story from. We want to know who is connected with us on this journey of rediscovery and humanity. The visual shock of the childlike sticker amid the technological scrap paralyzed Arthur, causing the noise of the crowd and the protests of the security guards to fade into a distant, painful For 5 years, he had buried every memory of his son beneath stacks of contracts and financial reports, believing that cynicism was the only armor capable of protecting him from the agony of loss. As he looked at that worn, caped hero stuck to the purifier, Arthur felt a deep crack form in his icy facade, an irrational connection that defied all the logic of his algorithms. With a sharp gesture and an authority that silenced the auditorium, he ordered the guards to release the boy, immediately ignoring the confused looks of his partners and the tension hanging in the air. That small piece of colored paper was a ghost from the past, knocking at the door of his sterile present, demanding an attention he could no longer deny. Elias was left standing at the center of the stage, straightening his simple clothes as he tried to catch his breath, keeping his chin raised despite the clear vulnerability of his situation. He explained in a voice that blended the urgency of youth with the wisdom of someone who knows deprivation, that the prototype was not a quest for fame, but a tool for survival. Orphaned at 12, the young man lived in a damp tenement on the outskirts of the city, where clean drinking water was an unattainable luxury, and disease was a constant companion for him and his younger sister. While others saw only a poor boy attempting a stunt, Arthur began to perceive a feverish intelligence and a purity he himself had lost decades earlier. Elias did not speak of profit margins or market scalability. He spoke of saving lives and of the moral responsibility of those who hold technical knowledge. Driven by a curiosity that bordered on emotional masochism, Arthur decided to take the young man to dinner at one of Singapore's most exclusive restaurants, where a single dish cost more than Elias's family's annual livelihood. The setting was surreal. The millionaire in his impeccable suit and the young man with a patched backpack seated at a white linen table, surrounded by gloved waiters and cut crystal. Throughout the dinner, Arthur observed the way Elias looked at the surroundings, not with envy or awe, but with an almost clinical strangeness, as if that luxury were an irrelevant distraction. The dialogue between them was tense and heavy, with unspoken feelings, with Arthur trying to uncover flaws in the boy's character, while Elias remained firm in his purpose. It was a direct confrontation between absolute material wealth and a poverty that, paradoxically, overflowed with purpose and hope. Elias revealed that his greatest fear was not remaining poor, but that his sister, who suffered from chronic kidney complications caused by contaminated water, would not live long enough to see the world change. He detailed how he spent sleepless nights studying in public libraries, assembling the purifier from discarded parts from technology industries to create an affordable graphene-based filtration system. Arthur, accustomed to dealing with entrepreneurs seeking nothing more than the next seven-figure investment round, was unsettled by the boy's lack of greed. Elias made it clear that he did not want to sell the patent to a corporation that would shelve it to protect profits. He wanted immediate, free deployment in underserved communities. That brutal integrity acted like a mirror for Arthur, reflecting the image of a man who possessed everything, yet had nothing left to fight for. The bond between them deepened when Arthur, in a rare moment of vulnerability, mentioned the son he had lost to a sudden illness years earlier, confessing that the sticker on the prototype was the boy's favorite hero. The silence that followed among the bottles of expensive wine was filled with genuine empathy, something Arthur's office had not witnessed in a long time. The investor realized that by helping Elias, he might find a path to redemption for his own soul, hardened by pain and the loneliness of the summit. He decided to personally finance the project, withdrawing funds from his private account to avoid the immediate scrutiny of his board of directors, who would certainly view it as a strategic mistake. The bond was no longer merely professional or technical. It was an alliance between two lonely men, united by different losses and a shared purpose. However, the transition from the world of ideas to practical reality would not be free of severe external obstacles and suffocating bureaucracies that would test the resolve of both men. The board of Arthur's investment firm, led by partners who viewed his involvement with Elias as a dangerous mental instability, began to plot his removal. Malicious rumors spread through the financial press, suggesting that the king of risk had lost his mind by investing in a backyard inventor with no academic credentials. Arthur watched his decades-long reputation be attacked daily, while internally grappling with the fear that he was merely an emotional fool being exploited by a talented con artist. The pressure was relentless, turning every board meeting into a battlefield where his sanity and legacy were constantly questioned by faceless men. At the same time, a rival sanitation corporation, fearing that Elias's low-cost technology could destroy its billion-dollar contracts, launched an aggressive smear campaign against the young inventor. They weaponized Elias's humble origins, publishing articles that accused him of intellectual fraud and claiming the prototype was merely a copy of existing technologies. The pressure on the boy was immense, with private investigators combing through his past and intimidating his neighbors in the outskirts of the city, searching for any misstep that could be used to destroy him. Elias began to waver, feeling the weight of a war he had never wanted to fight, questioning whether his presence in Arthur's life was only bringing ruin to the man who had helped him. The fear of failing his sister and Arthur became a constant shadow in his blue eyes. Sensing Elias's fragility, Arthur began to act as a protective mentor, using his influence and resources to shield the young man from legal and media attacks. He rented a modern, secure laboratory where they could refine the prototype, spending entire nights beside the boy, trading the comfort of his penthouse for the fluorescent light of a workbench. In those early hours, the contrast between them faded, and the mentor-apprentice relationship transformed into something far closer to father and son. Arthur taught Elias how to navigate the murky waters of business, while Elias taught Arthur how to look at the world with curiosity and compassion again. They were building something far greater than a water purifier. They were rebuilding the foundations of their own lives, block by block, under crossfire. The tension escalated dramatically when Elias's sister was hospitalized with a severe infection, raising the urgency of the project to a critical and nearly unbearable level for the young inventor. Arthur covered all medical expenses, ensuring she received the best possible care, which further solidified the emotional bond between him and Elias. Each obstacle overcome seemed to strengthen Arthur's determination to prove the board wrong and to show that human intuition still mattered more than any Excel spreadsheet. The investor was risking his fortune and his position as CEO, but for the first time in years, he felt his heart beating for a real and tangible reason. The fear of disappointment still existed, but it was overshadowed by the visceral need to see Elias's project succeed and save other lives. Meanwhile, the rival corporation attempted one last desperate move to steal the patent, infiltrating a saboteur into the technical team Arthur had hired to conduct the final equipment tests. Government bureaucracy also became a major obstacle, demanding certifications impossible to obtain in the short term for the purifier to be tested. During a real water crisis, Arthur leveraged every political favor and every ounce of his influence to clear paths, acting with an aggressiveness he once used to destroy companies, but now wielded to protect an ideal. The tension between profit and purpose reached a boiling point, with the financial world closely watching Arthur's every move, waiting for his definitive downfall. He was walking a tightrope, balancing between the ruthless man he had been and the compassionate man he was struggling to become. Social criticism intensified, with gossip columnists and market analysts mocking the duo, dubbing them the billionaire and the beggar, turning their partnership into cheap entertainment. Elias felt humiliated by the portrayals of his life in poverty, but Arthur encouraged him to use that pain as fuel for the work, transforming anger into technical precision. They knew the only valid answer to the world would be the machine's flawless performance under real field conditions, where Academic theory would hold no value. The fear of technical failure became a shared trauma, an anxiety that bound them in silence as they reviewed every solder joint and every line of code. Time was running out, and the external pressure was on the verge of exploding into a final confrontation that would decide both their fates. On the eve of the crucial test, Arthur and Elias sat on the laboratory floor, surrounded by electronic components and bottles of contaminated water used in their experiments. Arthur looked at the young man and confessed that if the project failed, he would lose everything he had built over 25 years of his career. But strangely, he did not care. He explained that Elias had given him something money could never buy, the chance to feel alive again and to honor his son's memory in a meaningful way. Elias, with tears in his eyes, promised that he would not let Arthur fall alone, sealing a pact of loyalty that transcended any legal contract ever signed. They were ready to face the climax of their journeys, knowing that what was at stake was not merely technology, but the redemption of two marked lives. The moment of truth took place in an isolated community in the interior of Asia, where a severe drought had turned the riverbed into a scar of dry, contaminated mud. Under the merciless 40-degree sun, Arthur and Elias assembled the purification unit before a crowd of desperate residents and dozens of international press cameras waiting. For the monumental failure of the King of Risk, when Elias flipped the main switch, the motor sputtered, emitted a sharp, metallic screech, and shut down completely, victim of the hidden sabotage that had damaged the internal pressure system. A deathly silence fell over the site, broken only by the mocking laughter of some journalists and the murmurs of disappointment from the crowd as their last hope for clean water vanished into grey smoke. Elias dropped to his knees in the mud, his hands trembling and his face pale, feeling the crushing weight of every criticism and humiliation he had endured, believing that the world had finally broken his will. That was when Arthur Vance, the man who had never stained his $1,000 suits, knelt beside him, ignoring the mud soaking his designer trousers and the sweat streaming down his aristocratic face. He did not shout or panic. Instead, he gripped the young man's shoulders firmly, locking eyes with an intensity no one had ever seen in the former investor. "Elias, look at me now. They want you to quit because your success proves their failure," Arthur said in a visceral tone. "I'm not here for the money or the patent. I'm here because you made me believe I could still be a father. Get up and let's fix this together." Arthur began opening the machine's side panels with his own hands, exposing the circuits as Elias, revitalized by his mentor's strength, quickly identified the sabotage component blocking the flow. Under the relentless flashes of cameras, now capturing an unimaginable scene, the billionaire and the orphan working shoulder to shoulder in the dirt, they replaced the damaged parts with near telepathic synchronicity. With every movement, Arthur encouraged the boy, quietly sharing how Elias's courage had saved him from deep depression and the existential void that had consumed him since his son's death. The dialogue was no longer about technology, but about the mutual healing of two wounded hearts that decided in that moment they would no longer be defined by their losses, but by their resilience. With one final, precise adjustment, Elias closed the circuit and Arthur flipped the switch again, holding his breath as the motor returned to life with a smooth, steady hum. Seconds later, a stream of crystal-clear water began to pour from the outlet hose, flowing directly into a glass Arthur held with mud-stained hands. He did not hesitate. He drank the water before the cameras, proving the effectiveness of Elias's invention for the entire world to see. As the crowd erupted in a roar of joy and relief, the young inventor wept openly, not from sorrow, but from a realization so profound it seemed to wash away every year of suffering and deprivation in the outskirts. In that instant, the barrier between the billionaire and the poor young man vanished completely, giving way to an unbreakable human bond. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now let's continue with the video. The resounding success in the isolated community sent shockwaves reverberating throughout the global financial market, forcing Arthur's board of directors into a humiliating retreat. Instead of fighting to keep his CEO position, Arthur stunned the world by voluntarily resigning, selling his majority stake to found Vance & Elias Global, an accelerator focused exclusively on humanitarian impact technologies. With capital secured, the first concrete step was the construction of an advanced innovation center in the very outskirts where Elias had grown up, transforming an abandoned warehouse into a beacon of opportunity for forgotten young talents. Elias's sister, now fully recovered and receiving the best medical care, was the first to cut the inauguration ribbon, symbolizing the end of a cycle of suffering and the beginning of an era of dignity for thousands of families. The transformation in Arthur's life was as profound as Elias's, manifesting in every detail of his new routine, which now prioritized human connection above any financial return. He traded his isolation in a cold penthouse for a constant presence in the field and the laboratory, acting not merely as a financier, but as the mentor and father figure Elias had never had. Legally, Arthur began the process of naming Elias as his official heir, cementing a bond that began with a superhero sticker and evolved into a family chosen by the heart. The king of risk had finally found the most profitable investment of his life, the redemption of his own soul through generosity and an unshakable belief in the human potential of those who possess nothing. The foundation quickly became a global reference, installing thousands of purifiers in disaster zones and arid regions, proving that low-cost technology was the most effective solution to the global water crisis. Arthur and Elias were soon invited to the world's largest conferences, but now they spoke not about capital accumulation, but about the democratization of knowledge and the social responsibility of great fortunes. The image of the two working in the mud became the organization's emblem, serving as a constant reminder that no social barrier is insurmountable when purpose and empathy are present. Their lives, once marked by loneliness and scarcity, now overflowed with the gratitude of entire communities that, for the first time, had their basic right to clean drinking water guaranteed. The story ends on a hopeful note, showing Arthur and Elias sitting on the porch of the Foundation's new headquarters at sunset, watching a group of children play around a fountain of clean water. Arthur no longer wears the platinum watch that once symbolized his former status. On his wrist now rests a simple handmade bracelet crafted by Elias's sister, a treasure he values more than any inheritance. He looks at the young man beside him, now studying engineering at one of the country's top universities, and realizes his mission has been fulfilled by transforming the pain of grief into a seed of life. The moral of the story is clear and powerful. True wealth lies not in what we accumulate for ourselves, but in the transformative impact we have on the lives of those the world has chosen to ignore. 10 years later, the auditorium of the Nobel Prize ceremony in Stockholm is filled to honor Dr. Elias, now a renowned global innovator and humanitarian leader. As he steps onto the stage to receive the gold medal, Elias adjusts the microphone and, with the same intense blue eyes of his youth, searches for a specific face in the front row of the audience. He points to an elderly man with white hair and a serene smile, an aged Arthur Vance, visibly proud and fulfilled. Elias concludes his emotional speech by repeating the words that changed his destiny. He was the only one who believed in me when the rest of the world turned its back on me, teaching me that love is the only technology truly capable of saving the world. Have you ever done an act of kindness that changed a life? Comment, "Love has no price," if you also believe in human kindness. Leave a little heart if you believe that love is more powerful than any wealth. Subscribe for more stories of second chances.